Hello and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I have been studying relationships for over 20 years as a couples therapist, a professor, an award-winning author, and as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Now, I'm inviting you into this space each week as I dig into some of the toughest and most fascinating relational dilemmas of our time. If you want to discover how to create vibrant and loving relationships in your own life, you have come to the right place. This is Reimagining Love. Hi there. Welcome to one of our Reimagining Love solo episodes. I am very glad that you're here with me. We're going to be digging into the question of sharing locations in a romantic relationship today, and I'm excited to dig in. I think the topic is fascinating because while sharing your location seems like a very small, very minor decision, it actually encapsulates so many of the values and tensions that I see as a couple therapist. Questions around closeness and privacy, and trust and betrayal, and safety and mystery. So whether or not you are currently engaged in a conversation with your partner about this topic, I think today's episode is definitely worth a listen. Okay, to get a definition out there. Sharing locations means using something like Life 360 or Find My Friends or that location feature on Snapchat so that you and your partner can see each other's whereabouts at all times. And by the way, if you have kids, this location sharing conversation is relevant as well for somewhat different reasons, but it similarly gets at the heart of some of the most tender parenting topics too. We're not talking today about that dimension of location sharing. But many of the questions that I'm going to pose in this episode and suggestions that I make here could be applied to conversations that you can and really should be facilitating with your kids as they enter adolescence. And by the way, the conversation with your kids is not just about whether, when, and how you share locations as a family, but it's also supporting them making decisions about whether and when and how they share their locations with their friends and their love interests, and whether they check the locations of their friends and their love interests, because that is a big anxiety spiker for sure. So talking with your kids about how all of it feels and what all of it means, and those kind of gut checks that our kids need to have with themselves. In fact, the inspiration for this episode came from an interview that I did with the Daily Northwestern. As you know, probably by now, Northwestern is where I teach. And this student journalist was asking me a whole bunch of questions about relationships. And she asked me a question about location sharing for couples. And the way that she framed the question conveyed to me that to her, it was completely normal, totally obvious, and totally unquestioned that of course couples would share and should share their locations. And I was struck by this, and I flipped the script and started asking her questions about what led to that assumption or that definition of normal for her. And, she and I were speaking across this generational and contextual divide. And of course, like when I was her age, I didn't have any assumptions about knowing where my partner was at all times. And of course, it wasn't even possible. And for her, it was not only, of course, we're sharing our locations, but also like if we didn't, it would clearly mean that we didn't trust each other. So that piqued my curiosity. And here we are in this conversation on the podcast today. So here's our plan. First, I'm going to talk you through some data that I collected online to give us a sense of how couples are navigating this. Number two, I'm going to talk about location sharing in the very particular realm of a couple who's dealing with infidelity recovery or a breach of trust, either in their current relationship or in one of the partner's past relationships. And then I'm going to talk you through kind of like a 4-part structure to guide you and your partner, to support you and your partner as you kind of tangle with this topic. It's going to involve the whys that each of you have for either wanting to share or not wanting to share. And we'll have some scenarios there. talking about some shared values, relational agreements, and then a little ritual that can support you as you move forward with whatever decision you make. Okay, let's dive in. As I so often do in these solo episodes, I'm going to just name two caveats right up top. Number one, as always, I am speaking to you from my specific context. Like, yes, I'm a couple therapist with a hell of a lot of years of experience, and I've been looking at the relationship science and all of the things for decades and decades and decades. But I'm also, I'm also me. I'm Gen X. I'm a digital immigrant, not a digital native. And I am somebody who is committed to staying in dialogue with both people who are older than me and people who are younger than me. So I continue to have this felt sense of the interplay between technology and psychology and relationships. And number two, I also want to flag that I'm talking here about couples in a normative range of preferences around location sharing, knowing full well that a desire or a demand to track someone's location can also be a malicious and abusive tactic in a relationship context. And that's not the focus of today's episode. If you or somebody you love is dealing with that kind of abuse and control via technology, including stalking, other unwanted behaviors that threaten your safety, we've got some links in the show notes to some resources. Okay, so when my team and I were planning out this episode, we decided to turn to our Instagram community and pull some data about how people are feeling about location sharing in a relational context and to hear what questions they have about it and to find out how many people, what bottom line here, how many people are sharing their location with their partners. So this is, non-scientifically collected data. It did not pass the rigors of the institutional review board. But it's a meaningful sample size. We got over 908 responses. So that's pretty sizable N, if I do say so myself. But it gives us a sense of where people are on the issue. Bottom line is, my team and I were most surprised to see that the people are basically pretty evenly split all over the place. There's not a strong, obvious, duh, this is the normal, this is the right, this is the obvious thing we should be doing about it. So it goes back to you and your partner to figure out for yourselves via supportive, intentional conversation, which we're going to get to in a bit. So here's what we found. We asked the question, do you share your location with your partner? And out of 908 votes, there were 45% of the audience said, yes, I share my location with my partner. And 55% said, no, I don't share. So pretty evenly split, tiny skew towards not sharing. Then we did a little sticker, like an open-ended sticker. We said, why do you share or not share? The people who do share said their reasons for sharing were safety, convenience, ease of communication, trust, accountability. It's helpful when somebody loses their phone, knowing when they're going to be home and versus, tied up at work. The whole family shares, our kids share, so we all share. People reference a long distance relationship, it being nice to keep up in a long distance relationship. Some people talked about trust issues or trauma from the past and how location sharing helps with anxiety. And some people share that it's a variation on the convenience theme is that it prevents having to text them or bother them. They can just take a peek and see where they're at. Okay, people who said, no, I don't share, said, we already have openness and trust in our relationship. We don't need it. People said, we're adults. We don't need it. People said it feels invasive. People said, I don't want to know because I know I'm going to check my partner's location and that feels stressful. I need to save myself from myself. People use the word creepy. It feels like an invasion of privacy. And then some people said, other people have my location in the case of an emergency, so my partner doesn't need to have it. Then we were like, okay, when did you start sharing your location with your partner? And here people were petering off. So here we have 391 total votes. And this was interesting. So the vast majority of people said that they started to share their location with their partner after a year. So 63% of people said it was over a year into the relationship. 11% of people said it was 7 to 12 months into the relationship. 17% said it was 3 to 6 months, and 8% said it was right away. So that's interesting that it seems like it was a developmental milestone, a commitment milestone, if you will. And then we just kind of checked in with the audience then finally just for additional thoughts. Some people said, listen, my location sharing wasn't even an option when my partner and I began dating. And some people commented that they have each other's location, but don't really check it. And then some people got into the need to be careful not to weaponize it, right? Why were you at such and such a place, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then a bunch of people were like, okay, please make an episode because we want to hear more about it. Oh, some people said that they have it turned on when they're traveling. So it's like sort of a selective, like depends on our context. So that's the data. Bottom line takeaway is that, a couple of things. That it seems like there is a point along the way where the shift happens. And that, if that's the case for you and your partner, the point at which you do decide to share, bring a little bit of intention to it. We'll talk about that later when I'm going to offer you an idea of a ritual. And listen, by this point in the episode, you might already be thinking, oh my God, it's a setting on a phone. It's not that deep. So while I'm not saying you need to do a year of intensive couple therapy before you make the grand decision to either share or not share, what I am saying is our relationships are better and stronger and emotionally safer when we are willing to say that even little things matter. There's depth. There are things that can seem and feel very simple on the surface that evoke some pretty deep, pretty significant reactions inside of us. And there's more risk in downplaying a little thing than there is in overplaying a little thing, right? So don't be afraid to kind of stretch something out in the space between you and your partner and look at it together. Conversation is intimacy promoting. You're going to learn something about yourself and your partner by sitting shoulder to shoulder and looking together at the pros and cons of location sharing. And sometimes the things we brush off and act like are no big deal, they come back to bite us in the butt because we down the road are realizing that we said yes when we mean no, or we said no when we really mean yes. Even if it's an easy conversation because you and your partner happen to agree on which route you prefer, I don't want you to miss that opportunity to have that connecting check-in. I want you to, have the conversation, take note of it, even if it's nothing more than you just get to give each other like a nice high five and say, it's so cool. It's so cool that we are aligned. It's so cool that we have this measure of trust. It's wonderful that we care about each other's safety. Like, I want you to also make sure that you give yourselves a chance to savor and experience a sense of pride in who the two of you are as a couple. The problem is, in the absence of a thoughtful conversation, what fills in the silence are assumptions and aphorisms. Assumptions like happy couples share, or if you loved me, if you trusted me, you wouldn't want to share, or I saw on TikTok that we're supposed to do it at the 6-month mark, or it's not that deep, like that's what I want you to avoid. I want you to avoid a simplistic, sweeping, good, bad frame on the issue, right? Our Instagram poll highlights how split people are on the issue, highlighting there's not a right way and a wrong way, except I would say the wrong way is a kind of reflexive decision. So it's going to be a unique, idiosyncratic choice. Okay, so let's just sit for a moment with our post-infidelity trust rebuilding couples, because most of this episode is not going to be about you. Mostly I'm talking about couples who are experiencing conversation and tension around location sharing without the context of infidelity. But I want to spend a little time here because it's a lot of my clinical work. And I think that in that context of healing a breach of trust, location sharing actually ends up being a pretty powerful tool. So for a post-infidelity couple where there's an interest in rebuilding trust, location sharing is often a part of a larger plan to reestablish trust. It's sort of seen as like a temporary, trauma-informed piece of a larger treatment plan. And especially in the early weeks and months post infidelity, the betrayed partner is attempting to make sense of so much. Like, okay, so wait, you weren't where you said you were? It's like the betrayed partner is lining up two different tracks inside of their minds, the reality that they thought they were living in and the reality that they were actually living in. And so being able to see right here, right now, where their partner is can create a modicum of much needed calm during what is otherwise a very stormy time. And by the way, it goes best for the betraying partner to offer to share their location rather than waiting for the betrayed partner to ask. And in fact, part of the betraying partner's healing journey is reckoning with the fact that they have the capacity to deceive. So, in that way, sharing their location can be for them an accountability measure that is also helpful for them as well, as they recognize that their deceitful behavior means that they have the capability of living outside of their own integrity. And while they are learning what integrity feels like inside of them. And by the way, that journey is the ultimate safety measure for the betrayed partner, right? Not the betrayed partner's vigilance, not the betrayed partner's checking, but the betrayed partner being able to start to feel that their partner, the betraying partner, no longer even has that capacity to let themselves down like that again, right? I am ultimately safest in this relationship when I can feel and trust that you love yourself too much to be deceitful again. That's the ultimate safety for me. It's not me monitoring you and checking you and making sure that you feel like you can't cheat on me again. It's me being able to sense that actually you don't want to do that to yourself again. Okay, so what if you're not dealing with infidelity or a trust violation in your current relationship, but you were instead cheated on in the past? And even though the relationship you're in now feels healthy, you are finding yourself really feeling like you want or need your partner to share their location. Well, what I would say in that situation is I probably would want your partner to agree for a time to share their location with you. And I would want you to feel proud that your partner is tending to your pain in that way, even though it's not pain that they specifically caused. But I also would want it to be an ongoing conversation. Like, okay, let's agree to have it this way for 3 months, and then let's revisit it. And I would want you to continue to find your growing edge. So perhaps when your partner first shares their location with you, maybe you check it, I don't know, 5 times a day, and you do that for a week. Well, the next week, I would want you to check their location only 4 times a day, and so on. Like, I want you, as a formerly betrayed partner who's now in a healthy relationship, I want you to have yourself on an active training program where you are reducing your checking behavior. You could even put the app in like a subfolder on your phone so it's harder for you to find, right? Because it's like, when it's there and it's so available, you probably are at risk of checking it. And the more we check location, the more it feels like it becomes a proxy for trust. This is what I was really struck by in the conversation with the Northwestern undergrad, is the way she was talking about it. It was like location sharing was the proxy for trust. Location sharing was the proxy for secure attachment. It was the way to feel safe. So for you, as a formerly betrayed partner, I worry about you potentially inadvertently kind of reawakening that traumatized part of yourself again and again by checking your partner's location. Because I think in the checking, what I worry is that you are telling that vigilant part of you that the only way you can be safe is to monitor. And the only reason your current partner is trustworthy is because they are being monitored. I want you to wrap up that traumatized part of yourself, to give that traumatized part of yourself some love, and to say to that part, it makes so much sense that you feel like you need this. And so we're going to give it to you for a little while, but we're also going to keep stretching you, right? I don't want you as a formerly traumatized, formerly betrayed partner to believe that you have to have this level of accommodation for the rest of your life, because I worry that you are underestimating your capacity for healing, your capacity for post-traumatic growth. Okay, so now we're going to get into our kind of like our 4 parts. So when you and your partner, if you are kind of wrestling with this a little bit, share, not share, there's 4 parts I want you to kind of talk your way through. Part 1 is the why. This is really important for you to get clear on your why. I always want us to be checking in on our motivation. We want to be careful to not just fall into these like, of course it's obvious, or of course we should, or anybody knows, or this, it has to be this way. We want to be mindful about our motivation. Technology is powerful. Technology has changed the way that we relate to each other, and it's going to continue as AI, and all of the whatever the heck is next on the horizon. And we all have different levels of comfort. We all are on different kind of places on the spectrum of how we relate to technology. So I bring this up to remind you that if you don't agree with using the technological tools just because they're available, more power to you. Just because something is possible doesn't mean it's right for you, and that's okay. Just like some people choose not to use dating apps, whether it's for safety reasons or not wanting to be on the screen any more than they have to be, or they want to be set up by their friends, whatever. Similarly, here, you get to make decisions about location sharing this technology just because it's here, just because it's so easy. You still get to create your own relationship with the technology in a way that honors your personal values about privacy. And that's true no matter what the people in your orbit are doing. So you're not crazy for being confused by these questions about how to use technology in our relationships, because it's all incredibly new. So check in with yourself. What happens inside of your body when you think about sharing your location with your partner? Does your body feel neutral, calm, spacious? Does your body feel anxious and urgent, like you need to flee or hide? Does your body feel kind of like shut down, flattened, like someone just took the air out of you? This is data. This is your data. So the decision to share or not share, I want it to be purposeful and collaborative, not reactive and controlling. And I want you to be considering, alongside your partner, the factors that are shaping your preferences, like your relationship history, family of origin, age, culture. And what about for your partner? This self reflective and curious conversation guards against the two of you using location sharing as a proxy for trust. It keeps you from putting all your eggs in that basket, so to speak. So when you view the choice to share as evidence that there's trust between you, that's a very, very thin route to trust. I want the two of you to have more robust, more nuanced ways of creating and nurturing trust, whether you're sharing your locations or not. So let's talk about family of origin, mental health history. You know that I'm going to be wanting you and your partner to consider family of origin dynamics when you're facing a topic like this. Why? Well, we know that our families of origin are our original love classrooms, where we're first taught about the values that are central to our relationships. And none of us got the same education in those original love classrooms. When we're little, we learn things about privacy, control, trust, agency. We learn them through 2 methods. Number 1, we watch the big people around us. We see how they handle this stuff. And number two, we experience how the big people related to us. So here's an example about observation. If you grew up in a home where one of your parents was kind of kept on a tight string by the other parent, right? You watched one parent need to know everything about where the other parent was going, what they were spending money on, who they were seeing. Well, then your partner's desire to have access to your location may feel a lot more like control than love, right? What you observed growing up shapes your definitions of concern and care versus control and domination. Okay, here's an example that's about experience. If you grew up in a home that was rather neglectful, where your parents couldn't name your friends, where your parents didn't know what you were up to most of the time, there was a lot of space and quiet in your home, well, then your desire to have your partner's location might feel like a compensatory attempt to fill that void that you felt when you were growing up. You might be attempting to honor and heal that younger part of yourself by saying, never again, we're never again going to feel so lonely and so disconnected. We now, as an adult in a relationship, are going to feel connected. So it's important for you to draw that tie between what you're wanting in your current romantic relationship and how it is very likely, for sure, informed by what you experienced growing up. The last thing we want to do in our romantic relationships is rewound each other or play into old fears. These tender spots of ours are very understandable, but these tender spots can lead us to have a hard time respecting our partner's wishes. These tender spots can lead us to distort our partner's requests or their needs or their wants. So it's by recognizing the tie to the past that we can stop that time warp and remind ourselves, okay, that was then, this is now. My partner is not my controlling parent. I am no longer in that empty, quiet home of my childhood. So here are some questions that I wrote for you to help you surface those ties to the past. I've got 5 of them for you to think about. Number 1, what were the values in your household growing up around privacy, control, and trust? Number 2, to what degree did your parents know everything about each other? To what degree did they have private worlds? Number 3, how much openness was there between the parents in your home and the kids in your home growing up? Number 4, were there secrets in your home growing up? If so, were they kept from you? Or were you brought into them and expected to carry them along with the adults or on behalf of the adults? What was your relationship vis-a-vis secrets when you were growing up? And number 5, to what degree did you see the big people in your home doing things out of guilt rather than choice? What was the blend in your home growing up of duty versus desire? I like the idea of you doing some reflecting and journaling on those questions yourself, and then talking them through with your partner. As you are reflecting on the kind of like inner landscape of your whys, we just talked about family of origin dynamics, but I also want you to make sure that you factor in like a mental health dimension that may or may not also have its roots in family of origin dynamics. I would say that partners who have a tendency toward anxiety or who have an anxiety disorder, that adds a dimension, right? That means that your anxiety may be whispering in your ear all day, every day. More information is better. And P.S., if you are somebody who struggles with anxiety, I would venture to say that not sharing your location with your partner and not being able to see your partner's location and practicing regulating yourself in the face of not knowing might be both confronting, but also really good for you, like a really necessary stretch that might end up serving both your relationship and your anxiety. One of the ways that we make anxiety smaller is by taking some of those stretchy, uncomfortable risks of saying, okay, let me not have all the data that my anxiety says I have to have, and let me work on being calm nonetheless. Another factor you want to add to this equation is thinking about how your attachment strategies interface with your location sharing preferences. If you're somebody who skews anxiously attached, it's very likely you're going to want to share your location and have your partner's location. If you're somebody who skews more towards avoidantly attached, you may not want to share and you may not have any expectation of being able to see where your partner is. So think about family of origin dynamics, attachment style, kind of mental health profile as you navigate this topic. All right, let me just talk you through while we're here a few different scenarios and the advice that I would be giving to each of these couples. All right, scenario one. In a past relationship, you shared locations right away, and that was the norm. But now you're in a new relationship and your partner does not want to share locations. And that makes you feel weird because you were accustomed to a different way. And so you're wondering, was I wrong before in my last relationship or am I wrong now? So in this scenario, the biggest thing I want to say to you is that that's the challenge and the blessing of building a new relationship is that you are learning a new person. And the best way for you to learn a new person is to just learn them on their own merits. View them as they are. It's like, think about yourself as arriving in a new land that you just arrived to. Don't compare this new land to other lands that you've been in. Strive to just be in this land. Like strive to understand this person only in the context of themselves. So for you to sit there and be like, wait, my last partner did share. This new partner doesn't want to share. Which partner was wrong or which version of me was wrong? No, just meet this partner on their terms and be curious about their whys, the whys that inform their orientation to this. And it makes sense to me that it would feel strange to you, but also don't do the better, worse comparison. Yeah, just see them in their context and check in with yourself about what you feel like you want and need, on your own merits as well, not the version of you from the last relationship. Okay, scenario two. You get home and your partner asks you why you were in such and such a place today, and you feel like it's an invasion of privacy. How do you move forward in that conversation? Yeah, like you and your partner have your location shared, but then when your partner asks you a question about where you were, you get this like ick feeling. Okay, well, what I would want for you is I want you and your partner to go shoulder to shoulder and put this ick feeling in front of the two of you. Because the ick feeling isn't, I'm a devious bad person who doesn't want to be watched. And the ick feeling isn't, my partner is a creep who wants to spend all of their time tracking my location. The ick is just an indication that the system the two of you figured out needs to be tweaked. Your body is telling you that the arrangement you have isn't working. And the ick that was inside your body in that moment was just an indicator that location sharing or the way you're talking about locations just needs to be updated and investigated. And it might be as simple as if we agree to keep our locations shared, then we also have to agree that we're not going to ask each other questions about where we've been and why we were there. Maybe the ick that you're sensing is an intensity from your partner. Like it feels like they're accusing you or like they're fired up. So could you ask them about that? Like just check in, saying something like, hey, from where I stand, it's seeming to me like you're having an emotional reaction to where I was today. Can you help me understand that a little bit? Right? So checking in, talking about it. It's not about whose fault it was. It's just that there needs to be some revision in the system. And it may be that the new norm is that you turn locations off, but the new norm might also be that we approach each other differently when we've got some data that feels confusing to us. Okay, scenario 3. Although you trust your current partner, in a past relationship, your trust was broken. And having your partner's location eases your anxiety. And you're wondering how you can talk to your partner about this experience. And you're wondering how you can help your partner understand that this is a need of yours. And it's not really as much about them, it's really about you. So in this scenario, I want you to start with your grief. There is a grief in the fact that you were cheated on in a prior relationship. There was a shattering. And I think two things can be true. You can be actively healing from that broken heart and still needing some additional accommodations. Both those things can be true. You can be both healing and still tender. And when you approach it that way, that's self-compassionate, right? Self-compassion rather than shame. Feeling ashamed of your history and therefore what you need now, it's a road to nowhere. And actually, if you request for your current partner to share their location from that place of shame, you're more likely to turn your request into a demand, rather than an ask. When we feel ashamed of ourselves, when we feel ashamed of the things that we need, we come on stronger than we need to because we're kind of like trying to prevent what we perceive to be something bad or wrong that we're wanting. We're like getting ahead of what we assume is going to be our partner's pushback. So be compassionate with yourself about this accommodation that you would like to ask your current partner to make. When you can make the request from that place of being anchored in your own worthiness, then it's going to come across as an invitation, And for what it's worth, when your partner chose you, somebody with a history of having been cheated on, that's the price of loving you, right? For all of the wonderful things that they get by being your partner, that's like the sort of tax that your partner is also paying. And there's no point in being ashamed of it, So just talk about it directly. This is my history. I would love if you could accommodate me, even if you haven't been asked this by a previous partner. And I suspect and I hope that I'm not going to need your location shared with me forever. And I'm going to keep stretching myself to trust you in a felt kind of a way rather than a checking kind of a way. But I tell you what, love after heartbreak is not easy. And getting used to a healthy relationship after an unhealthy relationship is a little bit kicking my booty. So I would love for you to work with me on this. That is a really endearing way to make the ask. Okay, scenario 4. One of you feels really strongly about sharing, and the other one of you feels really strongly about not sharing. If you have different opinions on the topic, can you meet somewhere in the middle? Can you still honor both people's needs? So here's what I know to be true. When people get polarized, there's a power struggle. And in the face of a power struggle, the issue becomes a win-lose. And something that is actually requiring nuance and thoughtfulness gets boiled down to either the share, don't share question. And if we share, I win. And if we don't share, you win. The choice is binary. So if the couple is locked into that, the next step is you got to flip it around, shake it up, and figure out what's underneath the struggle. What are we really talking about? What's the yearning or the longing for each of us that's fueling our respective positions? And then what might be some other ways that we could have that yearning or longing met in this relationship? I will also just say that as a possible solution for this problem, you could become a mixed location sharing couple, right? And we had some people did cite that in our Instagram poll where one partner shares their location and one partner doesn't because they have different preferences or different safety, reasons. So flexibility. and creativity are necessary in this situation where you become polarized. View the polarization and the binary as a symptom that you've got to come at the problem differently, rather than seeing the options as limited, rather than focusing on shoulds, rather than looking, to the left and to the right at other couples and what they're doing. And I will also say, as a fun side note, that Todd and I are a mixed location sharing couple. I have my location shared with Todd and with our kids, and he's had his location turned off since like 2020, which is probably when we even had the option to turn our locations on. So, this mixed location sharing scenario works just fine for us. Okay, so part 2 is getting into your shared values. No matter how divided you are on the issue of location sharing, I suspect and I hope that you and your partner have actually quite a few shared values. It's what draws most partners together. And I bet that you could come up with many values, even if you feel like you're polarized around this issue. So here's a little exercise for you. Step 1, you and your partner take some time, separately generate a list of what you see as the shared values between the two of you. Think about values like connection, adventure, honesty, friendship, purpose, passion, trust, safety, protection, honor, clarity, fairness. So see if you can write down like 7 to 10 values that you think you and your partner have in common. Step 2, come together and compare your lists. Notice right off the bat which values appear on both of your lists. Notice which ones you missed that your partner got, and notice ones that you got that your partner missed. Kind of just like compare notes. Step 3, see if you can create a list of about 5 values that you both agree are the most important to this relationship. Like view the relationship as kind of it's a third entity. What are the kind of 5 key values of this relationship? And you get bonus points if you can even create like a rank ordered list, like number 1 to number 5. And then step 4, when you've identified your shared values, then those become the jumping off point or the compass north for relational decision making. When the decision, especially when you become polarized, the way to move through it is to move up a level, right? And what's up a level? Your values, the how, the sort of like what's behind, like what's the guiding principle for both of you. So if you can hook a decision to a value, it often will lead you out of the polarization towards something that you both can feel proud of, like, oh, right, this is the choice that actually honors this value that we both have said is important. All right, part 3, creating a relational agreement as a couple. So part 3 is for you and your partner to come up with a shared agreement about your decision. And a framework for this agreement might be, as a couple, we've made the decision to share or not share for X reason. And we know as a couple that the consequences for making this choice are A, B, and C. So therefore, we're also careful about E and F. That's the framework. I really like that kind of like 3-sentence framework. As a couple, we've made the decision to share or not share for X reason. We know as a couple the consequences for making this choice are likely to be A, B, and C. And therefore, we're also careful about E and F. This framework, this like relational agreement framework, moves you out of that binary, right, wrong, helps you build a response from that deeper conversation you've been having about history and boundaries and values. And it puts the two of you shoulder to shoulder with the question, facing it as a team, even if the path forward is maybe not one that either of you saw in the first place. I also like how built into this relational agreement framework is the fact that with every choice, there are consequences. So when you name the consequence along with the agreement, you are reducing the chances that down the road, you're going to blame each other for the consequences. It's like we had our eyes open, we chose this, and we know darn well that in choosing this, there's some consequences that come along with it because every choice has consequences. All right, let me give you 5 relational self-awareness questions to help you in this part of the process. Number 1, what does privacy mean to you? And to what degree was privacy an important value in the family that you grew up in? Number 2, if we decide to share our locations, what are our expectations of how each of us will use this information? What do we hope our partner does not do with the privilege of having this information? Like, what are the worst case scenarios or the fears? Number 3, if we decide not to share our locations, what's the story that each of us is telling about that pathway? Number 4, if we're not sharing our locations, what helps us feel safe and connected and that there's shared trust in the relationship? Number 5, how do we want to talk with our kids about location sharing? What do we want them to understand about our reasons for doing it or not doing it vis-a-vis, in our relationship with each other? Okay, step 4 is a little ritual. So I would say step 4 is totally optional, but I gotta tell you, I love a ritual. I love a ritual, especially at the end of something that's been a little bit spicy or tricky. What is the ritual? It is simply the practice of infusing a moment with intention and symbolism. I would venture to say that I think all of our relationships would benefit from heavier doses of ritual. Anything can be ritualized if you light a candle and or turn on some music and or pour something special to drink and or state something in a, little bit of a serious tone. I probably have talked in another episode of the show about my favorite ritual story, which was years ago when a grad student of mine told me that she and her now girlfriend lit candles and played music and dimmed the lights and said something in a serious tone when they deleted their dating apps from their phones. I think especially if you had a little bit of a tricky route to getting to the location sharing decision, ritualize the decision as a way of marking your amazingness as a couple and landing that feeling of pride in your collaborative efforts. All right, that's it. That's our episode. I'm glad that you tuned in to this one. I know it's a little bit of a tricky topic, and I know that it's on people's minds these days. So remember, there's no right or wrong, even if folks have told you otherwise. And I hope that the tools I've offered you here empower you to open this conversation with your partner and create that opportunity for the kinds of deeper connections and understanding that is what makes romantic relationships worth it and feel really good and safe. Until next time, be well. Thank you for listening to our show. Our producers are Elizabeth Vogt and Mary Chan and Katie Pagich of Organized Sound Productions. Our theme music was composed by Slade Warnkin. The show is executive produced by me, Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.